Aloha, my name is Kevin Kimball. I'm an accounting professor at Brigham Young University, Hawaii. The purpose of this video is to help students understand how to create a fixed principal payment amortization schedule. Unlike a normal mortgage amortization schedule where the payment is fixed, this one is a fixed principal. So the principal remains the same over the life of the loan. The principal reduction amount remains the same over the life of the loan. It's the interest portion that tends to fluctuate. When you complete this fixed principal amortization tutorial, you should have a schedule that looks very much like this. It's titled at the top, Fixed Principal Amortization Schedule, the prepared by, prepared on information, and the purpose. Down in the data section, you'll notice we have some highlighted cells that indicate the variables that the user will be expected to input. The white cells are mathematical computations. When I hit F2, it shows the math being involved. So the user will not be inputting values into the white cells, only into these green cells. And let's say I change the interest rate to 9%, the information would then update in the report section down below. So you watch this payment down here. We change the interest rate maybe back, go Control Z, which is undo, and you saw that the payment changed back. So the big idea with the fixed principal amortization schedule is we take the amount of the home loan, or actually the amount of the home, the purchase price, we deduct the down payment, assuming the person can come up with a 10% down payment, so 10% times $500,000, they can come up with $50,000 out of their own pocket. So they only need to borrow or finance $450,000 at the 7% fixed rate over a 30-year period. So if we take this $450,000 and divide it over 30 years times 12 months, 360 months, you would get the principal payment of $1,250. If you go down to the answer section, you'll see that the principal remains the same from period 1, month 1, and down to 360, which is the 30th, at the end of the 30th year. And up. So you see this is a fixed principal amortization schedule. But as you recall, if they have $450,000 outstanding at the beginning of the last month, or at the end of the last month, you have to pay the interest on that $450,000 at 7%, as you can see here. So $450,000 times 7% divided by 12, because you have to get down to a monthly rate, would give interest of $2,625. So this payment over here is actually the sum of this fixed principal plus the interest rate for that month. As you notice, as the time goes on, the interest portion reduces. Why? Because the principal balance at the end of the last month is reducing. So that's what you're going to try to accomplish, a fixed principal amortization schedule. I just hit Control Home to go to the very top, and it should look something similar to this when you're all done, and I wish you good luck on it. You can go to the Start menu, All Programs, and choose your Microsoft Office Excel 2007. In this case, I'm going to do the spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb at the end. So we'll just start right off with the key pieces of this particular case. Let's assume that in this particular mortgage, the borrower will have a fixed principal portion of the loan. In order to do the computations for this, we're going to need to obtain certain data from the user. So we'll set up a data section, and down below we will have an answer section. In the data section, key pieces of information are, first we need to know what the, let's say it's a home that we're paying for, or some other type of loan. Let's just indicate that this is a home. So there's a home, and the home value, let's say, is $500,000. Now, many loans will not be granted for the full face amount of the home, so they are going to require a certain down payment. So let's indicate what the down payment percentage is, and let's say that that's 20%. So 0.2 would be a 20% down payment. Therefore, the down payment in dollars would be the home amount times the down payment percentage. So as you see here, I didn't type 500,000 times 0.2 in this cell C10, but rather I referred to where those variables are. It would not be wise to type 500,000 here times 0.2, because later on if the user says, well wait, no, the home's actually $600,000, that will not update. You can watch the number here. If I were to change this to $600,000, it doesn't update. Why? Because the down payment dollar amount simply doesn't refer to the home amount in cell C8. So one of the powerful features of Excel is to simply refer to these cells, multiply it by clicking on the cell where those values are. So now you can see, if I were to change this back to a $500,000 loan, the down payment updates automatically. It's just good habits to get into. If you've got a formula that's going to rely on other variables, it's always a good idea to simply refer to where those other variables are stored in your spreadsheet rather than typing the values and what I call hard coding them into your Excel spreadsheet. We now know the home price and we know the down payment amount, so we can compute the loan amount. The loan amount would be equal to the home price, which is in cell C8, times the down payment, sorry, not times, minus the down payment dollar amount. Therefore, in this case, the loan amount would be $400,000. Let's imagine we're sitting in the meeting and say, wait, no, we don't want a down payment of 20%. We can actually give you the loan if it's only 10%. You can go here to cell C9, type 0.1, and you can see that the loan amount changes to $450,000. So they're going to loan you more with a lower down payment. Or they could come back and say, well, we're not so sure about your credit rating. We think you need a bigger down payment. We'll require a 30% down payment, and therefore they're only going to loan you $350,000. So what you should see here is that these variables are very important to updating your results. Now that we know our loan amount, we should also know the interest rate. Interest rates will always be quoted in our classes as an annual interest rate. So right now let's assume that we can get a 5% interest rate. So 5% would be 0.05. We also need to know the loan period. And I'm going to help the user know that that's in years, just so they don't put in months and mess up my formulas. So if the loan period is years, let's say it's a 30-year loan, we would just type 30 here. With all of this information, we can compute we can compute the amortization schedule. So we'll go down into the answer section and begin to compute this amortization schedule. In my far left-hand column, I'm going to put the month, and these will be numbered 0 through 360 because it's a 30-year loan times 12 months per year. That's 360 months. We'll also note here the payment amount, which will be made on the month. Also indicate the interest that needs to be paid. In fact, I think I'll change the order here. I think I will indicate the principal portion that will be paid, and then the interest that will be paid, and then finally the balance of the loan. So on our months, I'm going to start with 0, 1, 2, and after you create a sequence, Excel can recognize that sequence. They see that the sequence is 0, 1, 2. They can Excel automatically is programmed to recognize that the next one would wind up being 3. So if you hold your Shift key down, start in cell A20, hold your Shift key down and hit the down arrow key. I'm highlighting these cells. You'll notice as I move my cursor over the bottom left of this highlighted range, the crosshairs appear, and if I hold my left mouse button down and start to drag, Excel says, oh, okay, the next one's going to be 3, then 4. I want to drag this all the way down to 360. Went too far there. It's a little bit too fast. We'll go down to 360, which is a 30-year loan times 12. And I'm holding my left mouse button down this whole time. So now that I release, it shows all 360. a lot of students, when they get down to this point, they will often go over here to the left and drag this back up, which works. But another thing you might consider doing is learning some of these hotkeys. If you hit the Control Up key, so hold the Control button down and hit the Up arrow key, it'll put you all the way to the top of that range of cells. As long as there's a value in each of the cells from the bottom up to the top, it'll go up until it does hit this roadblock, which is a blank cell right there in cell 18. So that effectively stops it from continuing all the way up to the top. You'll notice that that numbering does come in handy later on. I'm going to bring this up so you can see what's in my data section here. So the balance at the very beginning in month 0, the balance is the loan amount. So I'm going to type equals and click on the loan amount. And I can just leave it as is because that formula will not be copied anywhere. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to determine what the principal portion is of this particular loan. Since this is a fixed principal paying loan, the way you would do this is, in fact, we'll go ahead and compute that up here and then we'll just refer to it. So the fixed principal payment would be equal to your $400,000 loan amount divided by 30 years times 12. So what we're saying is just take the $400,000 and divide it evenly over 360 months. That's effectively what we've done here by taking the C13, which is 30 years, times 12, that's 360, and we've taken the 400,000 divided by 360. So effectively what we're saying is that every month we want the principal of the loan, the $400,000 loan, to be reduced by $1,111.11 and something. Now that we know that that principal is that 1,111, I can go to cell C20 and type equals and click on cell C14. Let me show you a mistake that students might make, and then I'll come back and correct it. If you just type C14 here and hit enter and then copy that formula down, you'll notice it doesn't continue to refer to cell C14. So what I did is I hit Control C, copy, and I move to cell C21. I hold the Shift button down and I'm moving down, and I'm going to go Control V, which is paste. So what happened? When I hit the F2 button on cell C20, it brings up the formula equals C14. And then I copied it down. Let's go to C21. I hit the F2 button again, and that brings up the formula. You see that it's starting to move down to C15. Next one's going to be C16. Next one's going to be C17. What that means is that this is a purely relative reference. So if I copy this formula anywhere, if I copy it down one row, then the row reference of 14 will change to 15, as you can see. If it gets copied down one more, it gets changed to 16. As you can see, the reason this winds up saying principal in cell C25 is because it's referring to cell C19. Well, we don't want that to happen. We want it to stay referring to cell C14. Another thing you should notice, and I'll just go ahead and do this right here just to show you, if I'm in cell C20 and I go Control C and then I move over one column to column D and Control V, it's 0. Why? Because although we didn't change the row reference, which was 14, now in D20, you see the row reference didn't change because I stayed on the same row when I pasted. But you see that the column reference changed. It was C14, but now since I've copied it over one column, it's now D14. And if I were to copy this over, I'll go Control C and copy it over a couple more, you'll see it's G14 over there. We don't want that to happen in this case. So what we can do, I'm going to go back, I'll delete all this stuff, and we're going to start over again. So on principal, we want the principal to be equals to, and I'm going to be on month 1. I was showing you in month 0, but I'm on month 1. I'm going to go equals, and then I'm going to click on cell C14. But I want it to always refer to C14. The way that Excel shows that you always want to refer to the same column or always want to refer to the same row, is you put a dollar sign in whatever you want to fix. So if I put a dollar sign here, C, it's now fixed to be C column. No matter where I copy this formula to, I'll prove that. I'll copy it over one, Control C, Control V. You see, since I didn't change the row, it's still in 14. But column, I did change column, but it still refers to C because I have a dollar sign there. So I can delete that. Now I want this to copy down rows but still continue to refer to C14, so I can put a dollar sign there, C14. So now if I copy it down one, you'll see it still refers to C14. Let me show you one other thing while we're here. Once again, I'll delete this, and I'm in C21. I'll type the equal sign and then click on C14. While I'm still in this edit mode, I can hit the F4 button. And you can see it toggles. Now it's fixed the column and fixed the row. If I toggle it again by hitting F4, it's now fixed only the row. If I toggle it again, it's fixed the column. Toggle again, nothing is fixed, it's purely relative. Toggle again, C14, so that's fixed. This particular formula, we will want to have the same principle all the way down to row 360. So that is the correct formula. F2 is referring to cell C14. Next, what we need to do is we need to determine how much interest should be paid for the first month. The way we determine interest is we take the principal, the amount outstanding at the end of the last month, and we multiply it by 1 month worth of interest. So I'm going to type equals, and I'm going to pick up my balance, which is the prior month's ending balance. Now that can be purely relative, because if I copy it down to row 22, I want it to refer to the prior month's row 21 balance, and copy down, copy down. So this can actually remain as a purely relative. And I'm going to multiply it by the interest rate. So I'm going to click on, I put a multiplication and then a left parenthesis, so I make sure that the order of precedence, these inner parentheses will be computed first and then multiplied by E20. I'm going to click on the interest, which is the interest rate up here in cell C12. But I want that to be fixed because as I copy it down and down and down, I always want to refer to C12. So the way I do that while I'm still in this edit mode is hit the F4 button. And so that's purely fixed. And no matter where I copy this formula to, it will always refer to cell C12. But since that is an annual rate and I want to know the monthly interest, I have to divide the C12 interest rate of 5% by 12 months. That effectively has given us 1 month's worth of interest on a $400,000 loan. Since we know the principal portion and we know the interest portion, we can now go to payment, and the payment will be the sum of, in the left parentheses, and I just click on cell C21 and I hold my mouse button down and drag to D21 and I end up with a right parentheses. So in this very first month, the payment will be $2,777. Next question is, well, what will the new balance be after making this payment? You can take the balance from the last month, which is E20, minus the principal reduction. Therefore, after making a first month payment, you will owe only $398,889. This formula, if set up properly, can now be copied. This whole row of formulas can now be copied all the way down and it will be correct. Why? Because the sum for the payment will always be purely relative. So as I copy it down, it becomes C22 to D22, then C23 to D23. That's correct. The principal will always refer to this fixed principal payment. The interest will always be the prior month's ending balance times this fixed interest rate divided by 12. And the balance will always be the last month balance minus the principal reduction. Since that's been set up correctly using the ideas of relative and absolute referencing, I'm going to highlight cells B21 to E21. Now I've released the shift button. It's simply highlighted, and all you have to do is move your cursor over the bottom left and those crosshairs will appear, and just double click, and all the formulas, calculations have been copied down, and you can hit end down, and you can see that this effectively has become fully amortized. Let's prove that out by formatting this. I'm going to hold the shift button down. I'm in cell B380. I'm going to go over to E380 and go end up. So that's now selected my whole range, and I'm going to change the formatting of this to be maybe currency. And you can see that this now, after 360 months of payments, which were declining payments over the period, is now 0. You don't owe anything after this loan. That's the end of this amortization schedule. So now let's clean it up a little bit. We've created the amortization schedule. It seems like it's working. The nice thing about this is, let's say the down payment percentage doesn't need to be 20%, maybe it's only 10%. I can just change this to be 0.1, and it flows all the way through everything. Let's go all the way down to the bottom and see if it proves out to be true. End down, and you can see that also fully amortizes. End up puts me back again, and you can see I can change any one of these figures. In fact, I'll highlight the ones that I would expect the user to input. I'll change them maybe to maybe a light yellow or light green. I want them to input that. In fact, I'm going to control click these. I'm going to control click interest rate and loan period, because these are other pieces of data that we want the user to input. And I'll just choose that top one. Home amount and down payment percentage. Let's click that as well. So that kind of helps the user know that these are data items that they're going to be inputting. All the others that are just plain old black with the white background are not items that we would expect the user to put into the system. They would just be locked down formulas. Now it's time to clean up. I'm going to hit the Control Home button. Control Home, which always puts you back into cell A1, and we're going to title this up. We'll call this Fixed Principal Amortization Schedule. We will say this was prepared by Kevin Kimball, in my case. It's prepared on, and I'll just hit enter and go over to cell C3, and we'll just type, I'll just show you a new function called today. And it just types in today's date. So equals today, left and right parentheses, that gives you today's date. It's also nice to type in the purpose of your spreadsheet. The purpose of the spreadsheet is to compute a fixed principal amortization schedule. Now, one thing you notice is that you can actually highlight these, and you can merge the cells. So I'm going to click on alignment under the home group. If you didn't notice that, let me just go back. You hit the home ribbon, and then you hit alignment, and you can merge cells. So under alignment here, you can click merge cells. So now these cells are all merged, and then I'm going to wrap the text and then move my cursor over here to increase the size of the row, and so that purpose looks a little bit nicer in that cell there. It's now a combined cell from A4 to E4. Another thing you might want to do as part of your spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb is put in the file path so that people can actually go and find this. So if this were printed out, they could go and find the file on your system. The way you do that is you go to Page Layout, you click on the Page Setup grouping. In the Page Setup grouping, and this page setup appears. Click on Header and Footer, and under, let's put this in the footer, you'll see these different icons, and we're going to insert file path. And so this is just VBA code that indicates that the path, which is maybe it's on your C drive, C:, and then it gives you the different folders all the way down to where this particular file is saved, and hit OK. And you should see here, this currently is under Documents and Settings, User 1, My Documents, and Book 1, since it hasn't been named yet. So we will name that, but this will update automatically for whatever new name we input. Let's give it a name, File, Save As, or a hotkey for that is Control S, and it will bring up this dialog box which asks you to name it. In this case, I will save it under my Accounting 232B course. Accounting 232B, Fixed Principal Schedule. I'll call it the same thing as up in my title, Fixed Principal Amortization Schedule, and hit Save. Now I saved this, if you didn't notice, I saved this as an Excel 97 2003 workbook. If you don't like that, you can change it to an Excel 2007 workbook. But remember, if you do that, now you'll have two files named the same thing. One will be a 2003 file, and the other one will be a 2007 file, but they'll have the same name. The icon will look slightly different, but you do need to be aware that that's what will happen if you do change the file type after it's been saved once. Let's clean this up a little bit further. Maybe on data section we'll Control B, Control U, the data section title. I'm also going to change the color for this group by shifting and A7 to E7, clicking on the home button and changing the fill color. I think I'll take a muted color here, maybe something like that, and I'll put a box around it by going to the font in home and putting a thick box around it. The answer section, I'll put another color on that, maybe a blue, and put a thick box around that as well, and also Control B and Control U, the answer section. It doesn't look like my color stuck, so let me try that again. I'll change that color to be blue. And it might be nice to highlight the titles here, Control B, Control U those, and maybe also center them. Under Home and Alignment, you can hit the Center button. It's starting to look a little bit better. I tend to like to have a little space between the titles, so I'm going to go here to row 8 and go Alt-IR, which is Insert a Row. In that case, it gave me that coloring, so I might have to highlight that and get rid of the coloring. No fill. Still seems like we could help the user a little bit by changing the formatting. So, for example, home, the down payment, the loan amount, the fixed principal, these are all dollar amounts, and so maybe I'll change those to be dollars by going up to the home and choosing the number format for dollars. The down payment percentage and the interest rate, those are percentages, so I might go up to home and the number formatting and choose percentage and increase the decimal places by 2, just in case it was like 5.25%, to kind of clean that up. And maybe loan period in years, we'll put that in the middle. So I think now we have something that at least it's a good first shot in making a professional fixed principal amortization schedule. It is something that you could change the interest rate, let's say 0.07, and everything updates. And if I go to the cell E21 and go end down, you can see that it still fully amortizes even with this new rate. So end up. And hopefully you've been able to understand the key points that I'm trying to show here. Tried to show you some basic spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb, tried to show you some formatting, showed you the basic calculations for a fixed principal amortization schedule, and also tried to highlight the concepts of relative and fixed references. That's the end of this presentation. One of the test out features of this class is that you create something like this within a specific period of time, which time I will be noting later. Thank you.